Hello everyone, Melody Llama here, and you are watching Ranking the Akatsuki from Weakest to Strongest. Obviously, as the title suggests, that's what I'm going to be doing. It's important to note that I will not be including characters when they weren't part of the Akatsuki, so basically no Jubito, no Edo Itachi, and no EMS Sasuke, basically the one from the War Arc, or second half of the War Arc. We're not going to be talking about them. Of course, they would most likely take a lot of the top spots. Same thing goes for Nagato. So we're going to be talking about them exclusively when they were part of the Akatsuki. I will be talking about Taka and Orochimaru also, since I believe, they were part of the Akatsuki, so why not include them on the team? So basically, we're ranking 15 members from weakest to strongest. I know this topic's been done to death, but I decided I'm going to throw my 2 cents in it. It's important to note 2 things when watching this video. Number 1, obviously, this is just my opinion. I'm not the be-all, end-all of Naruto power scaling or who would beat who. I'm totally open to hearing other suggestions on who can beat who. I know that ranking the Akatsuki has always been a controversial topic. Secondly, I will be taking information from Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm Revolution. I know a lot of people don't consider it canon, and I don't blame you. There are some retcons to the main series, but the series itself retcons the main series, so I figured that let's talk about it anyway. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get on the first person on our list. Zetsu being first is probably a surprise to nobody. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that Zetsu is at the bottom of the list. Now, if we're talking like Guru, that's an entirely different discussion, but I'm more talking about just the base Black Zetsu and the base White Zetsu, which is mainly the one that fought in the army. To my knowledge, the average enemy in the Zetsu army is actually stronger than the average shinobi, but that doesn't really mean anything considering the Akatsuki, each and every one of them can probably handle an entire platoon of soldiers, so the Zetsu army being slightly tougher doesn't really make a difference. Furthermore, this army was powered by Kabuto, so their base forms are actually weaker than we think. Zetsu alone is weaker than we think, even while getting powered by Kabuto, who, mind you, Kabuto's an absolute monster, can beat most of the Akatsuki, if not all the Akatsuki. So the fact that even then he was getting smacked by the Shinobi Alliance is kind of pitiful. There's also this scene where White Zetsu wraps around Mei, and all Mei does is kind of blow to the side and is able to evaporate Zetsu. Granted, he regenerates, but I imagine that in an actual fight she'd just be able to blow on him and erase him entirely. And as we know, Mei isn't all that impressive. She does a couple impressive things, but that's only because she has the other 4 Kage. On top of that, if we look at the fight between Sasuke and Itachi, the fight they had where Itachi dies, he was pretty much crapping himself over the Dragon Flame Jutsu, which wasn't even meant to be like a powerful jutsu. It was really just there to set up for Karin later on, so the fact that he was crapping himself over that is kind of sad. Now, of course, before I even continue further, there is the argument that, he was able to pierce through Madara's chest, but I will just contribute that to plot, because there's no ways Black Zetsu is anywhere near the level of 6-pass Madara. Let's not pretend like he is. So that feat of him killing Madara is stupid. Him being the lowest makes sense though. He was never really the fighter type. He is just pretty much their intel guide. He just kind of watched all the battles and I guess wrote the Shinobi history. Which is also very interesting because he wrote the Shinobi history, but yet he's still surprised when he sees things like the Dragon Flame Jutsu. So that's interesting to note. Goes to show that Zetsu's he's not only the weakest Akatsuki member, but he's also a terribly written character. The worst written character in the Akatsuki. Next we have is Hidan. I'm pretty sure everyone's in agreement that Hidan's the weakest member of the Core Akatsuki aside from Zetsu. Now surprisingly, there are some people that believe Hidan isn't the weakest Akatsuki member. There are a small few, but they exist. I'm going to go over why Hidan is the weakest Akatsuki member, but before we even jump into why he is, let's talk about some of the pros. 1, he survived an encounter against the Two Tails. That's something that can be given to all the Akatsuki members, and it's why I don't like when people say Hidan is fodder. He's not fodder, he's just, weaker than the Akatsuki, which all the Akatsuki are pretty strong, aside from Zetsu. Another thing to keep note is that in terms of hand-to-hand combat, he was able to go toe-to-toe with Kakashi. Granted, this Kakashi was tired or didn't have the Sharingan, but Kakashi, in my opinion, is probably one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in all of Naruto, and Hidan can keep up with him for long periods of time. He does have two smaller feats. One of them is dodging the Shadow Possession Jutsu, which is not too bad. You know, he's done it multiple times. I believe he dodged it both in their first fight and in their second fight. So he's consistently able to dodge this attack. Also, another thing, in the data books, he does have a full stat of stamina. I find that interesting because it's not like stamina is directly related to health, so it is possible that Hidan just can't get tired, which I suppose is neat for Hidan. Unfortunately, we're going to jump into why he is the weakest Akatsuki member. One, I don't think one-on-one he would have been able to defeat Asuma. I just don't think he would have done it. In fact, he already lost to the team of Shikamaru and Asuma. Kagozu pretty much had to save him in that fight. Another thing to keep in note is that the Ritual Jutsu is everyone's like, oh shit, he's got the Ritual Jutsu. He can basically kill anyone in just a single blow. But it's very, very weak. First, Hidan has to land an attack on the target. And if we look at the rest of the Akatsuki members, the Ritual Jutsu is abysmal. I mean, first we have Deidara. He's never even going to reach him. Then we got guys like Itachi who could just block the attack. Konan, when Hidan even goes for a strike, she can probably just turn in the paper. Kagozu, who could survive the thing. The Ritual Jutsu is weak against every single other Akatsuki member that we have on this list. So that's why Hidan's on the bottom of the list. If you think Hidan should go higher, please leave it in the comment section below. One more thing to note, and this is why I brought up the Storm Revolution points. But even taking Storm Revolution into consideration, Hidan is still the lowest on the list. I know people are going to bring up that Hidan was able to defeat Kagozu. He actually took out one of the hearts in that storyline. However, it still doesn't help him. You can contribute that to Kagozu, of course, not knowing what Hidan is capable of, not taking him seriously. There's tons of points. And plus, Kagozu, one-on-one wise, his thing is that he has multiple hearts. Hidan defeating Kagozu like one-on-one, just like... And it's possible that Kagozu wasn't going all out. Again, he probably underestimated Hidan, and that's what led to Hidan being able to take out one of the hearts, if we even take that into consideration. So I understand that at first glance, Karin doesn't seem like much, but I definitely do think that Karin would be higher than Hidan. There's a few reasons why I believe this. Well, let's look at the first pretty impressive feat that Karin displays. It's during the final arc when she's dodging all these attacks from the giant wood statue. And she displays some pretty incredible taijutsu maneuvering. Pretty similar actually to Hidan and Kakashi when they were fighting. Again, I'm not saying that Karin's taijutsu is as good as Hidan's, but it's sufficient. It's able to dodge all of these multiple attacks coming her way. Another impressive thing that Karin's able to do is heal herself pretty immensely. She gets stabbed directly by Guru and just bites herself, and just like that, she's healed back to full health. I don't know how far the extent of this healing goes. I obviously don't think it's around like Tsunade or Sakura level, but the fact that she could just bite on herself and then bam, she's back to full health after getting impaled. If that isn't enough to convince you, then she does have pretty good sensory capabilities. Supposedly, in the data book, it says that her sensory abilities are higher than that of the ocular jutsu, the Sharingan and all that nonsense, which, by the way, that's pretty insane. If you remember just how great the ocular sensory abilities are, Kakashi's able to like predict Zabuza's movements before he even does it. And if Karin's sensory skills are better than that, that's pretty crazy. Now, Karin is not perfect, of course. She doesn't really have any real strength feats. I mean, occasionally she would be able to like attack Sweetgetsu and like blow his head right off. But, you know, those are comedic scenes. So I guess if you want to take them, then she's able to do damage to Sweetgetsu. But if not, then we kind of don't have much. Then we have the fact that her durability is not that great either. I mean, she got one-shotted by Sasuke. And granted, this is Sasuke in the 5 Kage Summit. But we really don't know how strong the Chidori Sharp Spear is. So the fact that she got one-shotted by that, it's also not too great. I doubt that Sweetgetsu or Jugo would have been one-shotted by an attack like that. Maybe Hidan, but definitely not the other two. So Karin is, in my opinion, safely put here. She has the giant Uzumaki chains that Hidan would have no response to. They would be able to tangle him up and rip him apart, and there'd be nothing Hidan can do about it. He would not be able to close the distance to draw blood and use the ritual jutsu, just because Karin could just keep him at bay at all times. That's just my take on it. So next we got bodied by the Raikage Jugo. Now, before I even get to that point, I do want to bring up that he did take one attack from the Raikage. He kind of ate like the initial strike. I wouldn't say he ate it, but he survived the attack, and that's alright. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's an incredible feat, but it is still the Raikage. He's able to attack the Susanoo or whatever, and Jugo does tank the first hit. However, that pro turns into a con because he gets negged by the Raikage. Like, it's not even challenged really. The Raikage beats him in 2 hits, and that's kind of not embarrassing because the Raikage is a monster, and he'd body Karin or Hidan or anything, but I just think the ease in which the Raikage defeated Jugo is not the ease I think that the Raikage would beat the others. I do think he'd beat other Akatsuki members. I just think the simplification of how easily he beat Jugo is not that common with the other Akatsuki members. That's just my take on it. Now, to look at some pros for Jugo, his reserves of chakra seem to be ridiculous. He was able to amp the Susanoo, and mind you, this is a Susanoo from EMS Sasuke. It's not even the one from the 5 Kage Summit. It's even stronger. So Jugo was able to amp that, so that's alright. And he's also able to heal wounds from taking other people's chakra, which is pretty neat. The problem with Jugo is that his versatility is pretty good. I mean, he's got this like giant arm, he's got the blade, he can like boost himself to go faster, but he just loses most fights he competes in. His win to loss record is abysmal if you don't count filler. In fact, I don't even know if he won fights in filler. That's just a guess. I'm sure he did. I'm not too sure. I didn't watch Naruto filler. 2 big losses. One of them's to Heavy Sasuke. Got pretty bodied. So I wouldn't put him anywhere near anyone who had a good fight with Heavy Sasuke, aka Deidara. And there's this theory going around with Kimimaro. So apparently people believe that Kimimaro was like dogging Jugo on the regular because he was the only person who could calm him down. He was like his only friend. I don't know if that's true or not. We don't have like concrete statements. It's more just implied, kinda. But if you take that in consideration, man, that's bad. I'm not saying Kimimaro's weak, but in comparison to the Akatsuki, that's pretty bad. Jugo would rank pretty darn low in comparison to the other Akatsuki members if he was getting dogged by Kimimaro on the regular. So that's just kind of all I have to say about Jugo. I'm kind of going to skim through him really quick. If you disagree, leave it in the comment section below. I know there's going to be a lot of contention with him and the next person on the list, but it's just my personal take on it. So there's that. This is a little bit of the spicy one, saying that Sweetgetsu can beat Jugo, but I believe that wholeheartedly. There's a couple things that Sweetgetsu have done that have just impressed me more. For instance, he fought Darui with half a sword, while Darui was a lightning user. He's basically his counter, and Sweetgetsu was still able to fight well with him. C had to jump in and help him out, which is crazy. But what's even crazier is the fact that Sweetgetsu was able to hold off the 8 tails, which is easily an Akatsuki level feat. Now, I established earlier that I don't believe Kimimaro is really an Akatsuki level character. I mean, he may be able to beat Hidan, but that's as far as he goes. And if the theory of him beating Jugo is true, that would put Jugo beneath every Akatsuki member. Even though I still think Sweetgetsu is beneath every other Akatsuki member besides Hidan, he has more evidence to suggest that he's closer to that Akatsuki range, since he has a feat right there that he's able to hold off, tussle with the 8 tails, and that's pretty impressive. I mean, there's the whole joke that since he's made of water, no one can beat him unless you use lightning, but he wasn't about to eat the 8 tails Biju Bomb, so it's clear that if you have enough raw power, you can get through his water gimmick. Again, Sweetgetsu is implied to have all those, fancy water jutsu like water dragon jutsu and all that nonsense, which is pretty good. He also got the jump on Guru. He blitzed him after he was distracted by Karin, so that's another pretty good feat. He's pretty fast as well. Pretty strong. We never see him use his one-arm jerk-off form, so I can't tell you much about that. Maybe it's powerful, maybe it's not, but he never used it. I'm sure if he mastered it, he would have been able to use it a lot more. Maybe the fight with Darui would have gone differently. Still, it was pretty heavily implied that he was going to get mopped by Heavy Sasuke, so that's as far as he goes. I think everyone else after this guy would give Sasuke an incredibly hard time. And I don't think Sweetgetsu is honestly one of those characters that could give heavy Sasuke an incredibly hard time. So that's why he's next on the list. Just keeping it short, we're going to move on to the next person, which I believe is going to be incredibly controversial. I can already feel the rage of so many people with this one. I'm not going to get love regardless of who I put between Deidara and Sasori, because there's people who love both of them a ton. So I'm going to try to explain why I think Sasori is the weakest one, even though for the most part in my life I view Deidara as the weaker one. But that's kind of changed now since I've done my own research on it and looked into it myself. And before I get into any of that, let me talk about Sasori's pros, because he does have a lot of pros. I think comparing Sasori to anyone I just mentioned, whether it's Sweetgetsu, Jugo, Hidan, or Karin, is a huge disservice to Sasori. I think Sasori would mop the competition before him. Hell, I'd even argue he might be able to defeat the previous three at the same time, but we're not going to get into that. So, let's talk about the poison thing. The poison thing is really good. You stab them and it's over. It doesn't matter how strong they are, they can't deal with that. However, it's not as good as you think it is. It's very much like the Hidan situation, although a little better because he doesn't have to get in close range and cut you. It's one of those things where, yes, it's powerful, but you have to land the hit, and unlike Hidan, it's not an instant kill. Sakura was able to hold her breath, and it's Sakura, so I can imagine that other people could just do the same thing. So let's talk about his good tools though, because the Black Sand is a really good tool. I believe that the 1,000 Puppets are really good tools, and I believe that he himself being a puppet is a really good tool, because he can just rebuild himself after being punched by Sakura, and that's pretty good. Although he's not very durable, it seems, since Sakura was able to break him apart. And I know that Sakura is really strong, but is Sakura's punches really that much stronger, or even as stronger as a clay blast from Deidara, or a physical strike from Kagozu? Because as we know, Kagozu is a physical specimen as well. Now let's talk about the whole destroyed an entire nation feat, and I'm going to explain why it's weightless and feetless. It doesn't really matter because we know nothing about this nation. Context is important. We don't know how he destroyed this nation. Itachi killed the entire Uchiha clan, but that was because most of them were asleep. We don't know anything about this. So people immediately hear, oh, he destroyed a nation, and immediately run with that and think it's a great feat. We don't know that. If anything, Deidara was about to destroy the entire Sand Village in his battle with Gaara. And I believe, and I wholeheartedly believe, that the Sand Village was probably way bigger and way more powerful than whatever nations Sasori destroyed. Now let's talk about the third Kazekage situation, because this is another one that people are going crazy over. Look, we don't know anything about the fight between him and the third Kazekage. So a lot of people believe that Sasori killed the third Kazekage and turned him into a puppet. Okay, how did he kill the third Kazekage? Did we ever see that fight? No, we didn't. He could have poisoned him. He could have surprised him. He could have sneaked up on him. We don't know anything about that fight. So people are saying that, oh, he just killed someone stronger than Gaara when he was even weaker, and yet Deidara struggled with Gaara. It's not really how it works. Sasori is a problem because we don't get to see a lot of the things he's done. We only hear about it, and so when people hear about things, they immediately go into, oh man, he's the strongest. Another thing that I want to clarify is that statements in Naruto are a bit, I don't know. You know, it's just like, statements in Naruto are weird, so I don't believe that Deidara saying that Sasori is stronger is the complete, oh man, he's stronger and that's that. I want to argue that even if Sasori is stronger than Deidara, that doesn't mean that he's stronger than more people than Deidara is stronger. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, when it comes to a ranking, I'm not comparing the top person with the below person. I'm trying to see who would fare better against most members. And so even if we give Sasori the benefit of the doubt that, oh, he could beat Deidara, it doesn't mean that he can beat other people that Deidara can. Now let's talk about the battle between him and Sakura and Chiyo, because although I don't think it's as bad of a loss as people make it out to be, I still don't think it's a good loss. The reason being is because Sakura is kind of doo-doo. Sasuke blitzed her pre-Orochimaru amp. He blitzed her and all of Team 7, took them out with no difficulty whatsoever. And then Sasuke gets stronger and tries to blitz Deidara, and Deidara dodges it. Deidara immediately knows that Sasuke's going for this blitz attempt and escapes, which Sasori was not able to even blitz Sakura. So in terms of like speed, Deidara would be able to dodge most of what Sasori throws him just based off reactionary feats. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with me that Sasori is slower than Heavy Sasuke. In fact, I'd argue he's even slower than Heavy Sasuke pre-Orochimaru amp. Now, we don't know how much the amp gave him, but even if we say it gave him no amp, just that alone, the fact that he was able to blitz all of Team 7 and Sasori's not even able to blitz Sakura, just shows that there's a pretty big gap in speed at least. And in a fight like this, that's kind of enough. And I'll explain why when I get to Deidara. I know it sounds like I'm, talking crap about Sasori, but I actually really like Sasori. I like Sasori way more than I like Deidara. So I'm just saying it how it is. Again, I was someone who thought Deidara was stronger too, but it's just my thoughts on it. So we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next person, which we're debating who would win between Deidara and Sasori, but it doesn't really matter because the next person is Deidara anyways. Alright, so we have made it to Deidara. Now, Deidara is stronger than Sasori in my opinion, as I stated before, and I'm about to go over why. So, let's go over the whole nation thing from earlier, and I already established that I believe that Deidara has already a better feat than that, which is nearly destroying the entire Sand Village. Had Gaara not been there, there would have been no one to stop Deidara. He would have just nuked the entire village, and there would have been nothing anyone can do about it. He defeated Gaara, who, mind you, before Shippuden came out, Gaara was actually considered like one of the top tiers. Obviously not as strong as like Hiruzen or Orochimaru, but, Gaara was still one of the best, so the Deidara defeating him was very great. Granted, him defeating Gaara isn't as impressive as many think because he was protecting the village, so it is kind of an eh. And we don't know if he's as strong in that arc as he is in the war arc, because he does some pretty incredible stuff in the war arc, so it's up in the air whether he was that strong, but Deidara defeating him is still a pretty big deal. I would make a case of Gaara being equal to Sasori. I could argue that. And Deidara just defeated Gaara here, flat out. I made another point earlier about Sasori's poison and why I believe Deidara's little microscopic bombs is just like the poison, but way better. I mean, what would you rather? Get poisoned or get nuked from the inside? I'd rather get poisoned. Either way, you're dead, but I just believe that Deidara's method of doing it is a lot more efficient. On top of that, you could just hold your breath with the poison. The microscopic bombs, it's not that simple. It's far more complicated, and in my opinion, it's way more deadly. Sasuke just kind of used hacks to get over all of Deidara's stuff, hacks that I don't believe Sasori is capable of using. Another thing I want to bring up is also the reaction speed. Like I said earlier, he was able to react to Sasuke's blitz attempt in the start of the fight. So Deidara can do a lot. I also think Deidara just has way more firepower and he can dodge a lot of Sasori's stuff. If Sakura can dodge him, you bet that Deidara can dodge it, for sure. Then Deidara has the giant explosion. I forget what number it is, C0? And there's no way Sasori's surviving that. And granted, that's a self-destruct, so it doesn't really count. But at best, this fight is ending at a draw, in my opinion. It's either going in Deidara's favor or as a draw. So I don't really need to keep talking about Deidara. Deidara kind of speaks for himself. He really doesn't have any cons. The only cons is his personality. He's a bit arrogant and gets annoyed easily. But aside from that, Deidara is great. It's kind of a shame to put Deidara so low. It just goes to show how powerful the rest of the Akatsuki are. So yeah, Deidara is on this spotted list, so let's just jump to the next person and the final person in this part 1 video. Next we got our boy Kagozu, the guy who fought Hashirama. Now, the first thing let's talk about is his 5 lives. Obviously, the fact that you need to kill Kagozu more than one time makes it a huge pain. It's not like Kagozu's weak either. I mean, I did say earlier in the Hidan point where I said that, Kagozu himself off guard isn't all that impressive, but Kagozu is still extremely intelligent. So taking out any of Kagozu's lives would be trouble. The only way they took out his lives were via Hidan's ritual jutsu, a Raikiri, which obviously would kill him, and the Rasen Shuriken, which again would obviously kill him. I mean, this guy is extremely powerful, just physically. He goes toe-to-toe with Choji while he has his expanding arms. And mind you, Choji is not a slouch. I mean, he's not very powerful, but his thing is physical strength, and Kagozu was able to overpower him with no difficulty whatsoever. On top of being a physical specimen, he also has all the nature transformations, which provides huge advantage. I mean, if we look back at the Sasuke and Deidara fight, the fight Deidara was at a disadvantage in, things like that actually do matter, at least in early Naruto. And since Akatsuki members are in early Naruto Shippuden, this stuff is important that Kagozu has all these nature transformations. Another thing is that he tanked an attack from the Two Tails, which is another impressive feat. The tailed beasts are very powerful, and Kagozu was able to just handle one of the attacks no problem. This combination of extreme intelligence, great physical strength, all the nature transformations, and great durability just shows that this guy has great stats on every part. He has no low stat. I don't think a lot of people are going to argue that Kagozu is this high on the list. I think most people are in that general consensus that he is stronger than Hidan, Deidara, and Sasori, and I don't think anyone's going to argue that Sweetgetsu and Jugo can beat him. So this is about the safest spot I could put Kagozu. I don't know if this was stated. I've tried looking for it, but I thought that he survived the battle against Ginkaku and Kinkaku. If so, that's very impressive. I'm not too sure though. That one's up in the air. But if we do want to talk about a battle that he did survive, it's the battle against Hashirama. And honestly, this is the only con per se I'm going to bring up. I am tired of people bringing up this Hashirama point that he survived the battle with him. We don't know what that means. Hashirama could have decked him in his stomach, left him on the ground, and told him he wasn't worth his time. And that would technically count as him surviving a battle against Hashirama. Also, we don't know at what point he survived his battle with Hashirama. We just don't know. We never got a flashback of the fight. I'm definitely on that feats are greater than statements ideal. So Kagozu saying he survived the battle with Hashirama and then not proving that he actually could survive a fight against Hashirama, that's one of those things where I just need to disregard because it holds no weight, really. I can't really talk about how that benefits Kagozu in a fight. So that's my point on Kagozu. Kagozu is extremely strong, extremely hard to get rid of. I think he's way smarter than all the previous people. Maybe we could talk about Sasori, but I'd even argue Kagozu's smarter than him in the data books. He has this extreme intelligence stat. So Kagozu's this spot on the list. He's the final person we're going to go over in this first part. So that's going to conclude part 1 of ranking all the Akatsuki / Taka alongside Orochimaru. Thank you guys for watching. I had a lot of fun making this video, so please subscribe. I'm just starting the channel. This is my first video, so there's more to come. I'll be coming with part 2, and I won't be only talking about Naruto. I'll be talking about Dragon Ball. I'll be talking about video games or pretty much anything else power scaling wise or what if scenarios. So if you're into that stuff, stick around, and thank you guys for watching.